Good morning, good evening, everyone, depending on the time zone where you are located. I warmly welcome all presenters, panelists, and attendees to this last webinar of the special edition series, jointly organized by the National Institute of Urban Affairs, UNESCO, CRDF, and Metropolis. The series has been organized to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the UNESCO recommendations on historic urban landscape. The series was initiated on 10th November and concludes today with the fourth webinar. The earlier three webinars presented good practices from heritage sites and cities in India and other countries and included Paramaribo from Suriname, Bukhara, Uzbekistan, Berat and Gerostastra from Albania, Valletta from Malta, Penang, Georgetown from Malaysia, Dhaka from Bangladesh, and from India, we had presentations from Ajmer Pushkar, Kochi, Gwalior, Agra, Shekhawati region, and Serampore. The case studies highlighted the approach to integrate urban heritage management with the broader goal of sustainable urban development and strategies to address the challenges thereof. The presenters very aptly also highlighted the contribution of such city efforts to achieving the 2030 development agenda. The key takeaways were first, the benefits of adopting the landscape approach for identifying, conserving, and managing heritage assets in the inner core city within the larger city context. Second, the need for an institutional framework to integrate urban heritage management with sustainable city development. And thirdly, the critical role of partnerships among city stakeholders, including communities. Some thought-provoking issues were also brought into the discussions, such as the definition of urban landscape in the context of a city. Before we proceed with the discussions and the presentations, I would also like to say a few words about NIUA engagement in the urban heritage management domain. Just to inform everyone that a technical support unit was set up at NIUA under the Hriday mission of Government of India, that is the Heritage City Development and Augmentation Scheme. The unit not only supported the National Steering Committee in program management, but also provided knowledge support to the 12 Hriday cities for preparation of heritage management plan and feasibility reports for the investment projects. The unit was supported by the World Bank Cities Alliance Technical Assistance on Inclusive Heritage-Based City Development Program, Phase 2. Under the TA, NIUA also supported Government of Rajasthan to prepare state heritage cities development strategy and supported the towns of Jodhpur and Navalgarh. Besides, the support was also given to Government of Karnataka to strategize use of heritage assets to catalyze local economic development. To also commemorate the Amrit Mahotsav on the occasion of India's 75th year of independence, in the webinar today, NIUA will present the 75 key action points for cities to integrate heritage management with city development. These have been prepared based on the knowledge gained from the World Bank Cities Alliance Technical Assistance Program, our ground level experience, and the key takeaways from this webinar series. These are at a draft stage and will be finalized on the basis of today's discussions before being presented to the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs for recommending to the city governments at large. Let me also outline the day's agenda. We would have the keynote address by Mr. Samir Unhale, who's Joint Commissioner, Municipal Administration Department, Government of Maharashtra. He is a member of the Indian Administrative Service and has long-standing experience of working hands-on at the municipal level. His last position was Commissioner Thane Municipality, and this was just when COVID had hit the shores of India and cities were struggling to manage the COVID situation. Following the keynote address, my colleague Mayura would be making a short presentation on the 75 action points. And then we would have a panel discussion for 45 minutes or so. And lastly, we would have a short presentation by Jyoti, who's the Deputy Director, World Heritage Center, Culture Sector, UNESCO, from the Paris office of UNESCO. And I would conclude the webinar with my closing remarks. May I first invite Mr. Sameer Unhale for the keynote address. The floor is yours, Sameer ji. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ajay ji. It is always a delight to be a part of deliberations of NIUA and UNESCO under your guidance. India has been a country, which is rich in heritage, rich in culture, rich in archaeological sites, and therefore it is obvious that the intersection of the urban areas and heritage and monuments would be there. In fact, we do see that different states and different cities have taken up different approaches and strategies to engage and deal with the sites, with these monuments and heritage. There has been an attempt to connect them closely with the tourism sector. There has been an attempt to closely connect it with the employability, and of course the visibility and the likeliness of the city. So before, I think even quite for some time, there has been an attempt by the India's urban system to connect and try to manage the monuments and heritage sites that were within the municipal limits. I think there will be many, many examples of various cities as to how they have engaged. Needless to say, our capital city, Delhi, the Heritage Commission, which works under the Delhi government. I think when you come to Mumbai, it is the heritage committees that are there to try to strike a balance between the current notions of development and protection and development of the heritage sites. I think the more we go into, I think the names of the cities will be many. I think it will be inappropriate on my part to leave any of them. But I think with the paucity of time, we have to first of all understand and do agree that the Indian urban system is trying to intersect and connect and engage with the heritage and monuments by its whichever means that it can work off. As we are aware that most of the important heritage sites and monuments are under the archaeological survey or under the state archaeological survey. So therefore, the cities per se or the city government do have to go on with greater partnership with this other departments within the state government, and also if required the central government to work and develop the heritage and monument sites. Of course, the theme of this today's talk is regarding urban landscapes, and I think that's a very important point, because it may happen that just one or two small buildings or one or big temples would be taken care of. But as we know, there is organic linkages between the historical and heritage sites and the city. It is not the site or the city is not an inorganic, just implant. It is organically linked, and therefore it is obvious that the historical, the urban landscape approach to manage the heritage and monument sites is going to be very important. And I think recently also, in fact, just a couple of days back, I think in the Diwali, we saw the Ayodhya temple and the area around the ghats of the river were made up into a very different, different approach to that. So I think the India's urban system will take up the challenge of engaging with the heritage and monuments and also protecting them. I think where the conflict comes, because as someone from the administration side of city administration side, it needs to be explored further, actually analyze and try to find out some solution that the heritage committees which function within the cities, when they are trying to work with the protection of the monument, there are a lot of things which are not allowed. So there's a lot of perception really of negativity, or whether the development process is being stopped in the name of protecting the urban landscape or the monument itself and the areas surrounding those monuments. So I think this is where we can use many tools which are available within the arsenal of the municipal bodies. Maybe the land use planning. I think Mumbai, of course, is one of the good examples in which the entire district from the Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Terminal, the CST, the MCGM's headquarters, right up to Kulaba, the Rampart Committee, which was set up in 1890s, I think was one of the first examples in, at least in Indian cities, in which we saw a structure was evolved, in which the Rampart Committee decided to have a uniformity of facades as the appearances from the external appearances that you might be seeing, especially when you move from the CST on the Nadavai Navroji Road towards Fort and towards the High Court of Bombay. You'll realize that you will see a familiarity of facades, and that is what one of the tools, very innovative tools, which was available to the urban bodies, which was utilized, so that the facades are made in consonance with the norms and the heritage. So I think this is one of the experiments which could be tried in other places where heritage and monument sites are available. Secondly, I must share an example here that the local representatives of the urban local bodies may not be very keen with the urban landscapes. So that is, I think this is the area which needs further deliberation, analysis, and rather innovation to seek the community's participation into any developmental areas that we're trying to do around the monuments. Because if a perception comes up that the developmental process will be a bit constrained by urban landscape issues, there might be some local hesitation which needs to be, of course, recovered. So by and large, although cities are considered to be more modern and more technological advances, I do see a great opportunity for the Indian cities, the Indian urban system, to respond to the challenges of maintaining and managing the monuments and heritage sites. I think we need to go also into the 21st century by means of latest technologies that are available. I think many experiments are being done in which for example, a very interactive apps and interactive technologies can be made available around the urban landscape of the monuments, which can really introduce the visitors or the tourists regarding the historical aspects, regarding the various specialities of that area, which otherwise may not have been possible. We have new technologies coming up, like immersive experiences, immersive virtualities and realities and virtual realities, and all the new advances which are coming up we can also help, like this entire intersection of heritage and urban areas. Of course, it would require a lot of political support from the political leadership of the cities, and certain flexibilities also need to be given at the local level to ensure that not each and every change need not always go up to the various other departments of the state as well as the central government, when decisions are to be taken of integrating the heritage management and monument protection along with the day-to-day functioning of the city and the employability and as one might add, the developmental process of the city. So I think optimal solution can always be made available for us, can always be searched on. And the communication with the citizens, I think, is going to be very important, because we have seen in earlier cases, whenever any monumental site brought in certain set of restrictions into and around the city, there was a lot of hesitation and rejections initially. But when the livelihood concerns of the people were taken care of by alternative green technologies, I think the entire community came along to all the measures of protection, the monument, as well as utilizing the historical and the urban landscape approach towards the city. So I'm sure that the Indian urban system will not let the heritage and monuments down in any way, and we will find solutions which are mutually beneficial to both the sectors. So Ajay, this was very few words that I really had regarding the intersection of the urban system and the heritage and monuments protection by vis-a-vis the urban landscape approach, the historical urban landscape approach to us. And of course, there are many examples that could be shared, but I think they will be entering into the details and maybe the broader perspective and the broader pattern that we are here to deliberate and to think. I think would have to be gone. So I think I would like to limit myself here to this very limited words that within hope and within assurance that India's urban system will definitely be a part of the historical urban landscape approach and give some better experiences and better protection to the various sites and monuments. So thank you, Ajay. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much, Mr. Onhale. We trust that you always speak from your experience and your heart, given the importance that you attach to this subject. But I believe through your address, you have set the tone for the discussion today as to how do we help the cities to respond to the dual challenge of managing its heritage assets, managing it in the perspective of continuous threat to them from the rapid urbanization in the cities, and how do we facilitate the cities to integrate heritage management with city development demands. Thank you very much. We would request you to join the discussion on the key city action points as well after my colleague has made the presentation. Thank you. May I now request my colleague Mayura Gadkari to make her presentation. Mayura, request you to restrict yourself to 15 to 16 minutes. And to all my fellow panelists and speakers, your CVs are being put up in the chat box, so I'm not going to introduce you. Anyone can look at your expertise by simply clicking on the chat box. Thank you. Over to you, Mayura.
Thank you, Ajay, and thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. I will just share my screen and present the action points to you. So as we are doing this special edition webinar series to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the UNESCO recommendation on historic urban landscape, many of you have attended the last 3 webinars in this series where we discussed what do we want to include in the historic urban landscape, what are the assets that we consider as urban heritage for today. So just moving forward, and as the context has been set by Ajay Suri and Mr. Samir Unale perfectly well with their talks, I would just go and highlight what were the challenges that our experts and the project shared. Yes, so we had examples from all the contexts that were presented in the webinar, where Ajay has already listed the city names, and everyone kind of reiterated the similar challenges that they faced, which I have listed on the screen for you, which was firstly recognition of heritage assets. What do we recognize as heritage in each of our cities? The lack of management that we have for these assets, the data that exists today, and the efficacy, the efficiency of it, the lack of skills that we see in cities, both in terms of professional expertise and the local skills that we need for activities like restoration. People are moving out from historic cities and inner core city areas. So we have gentrification happening, and this could be due to various reasons. This could be due to them not getting access to adequate infrastructure because of the property rates, or the multiple reasons. We have rapid development happening around historic sites and around historic areas. There are issues of multiple ownerships in the old cities that we see, and that's why it's difficult to navigate through these circumstances. We have to also navigate through our policies and the politics that exist in our urban context. Tourism is one of the industries that has been flourishing, and our historic cities are the areas where we do find a lot of the tourists coming to explore, but they do not have enough infrastructure, or it is having an adverse effect on the assets. As a result, the assets are deteriorating due to lack of funding or lack of attention. Mobility is one of the key it's one of the infrastructure that is needed for tourism to flourish, or for tourists to actually visit your city, any visitors to actually come in and see your city. And these solutions are restricted due to the absence of adequate infrastructure. So these are all the challenges which all the cities over the world face, and these are very common amongst all the cities. And what we did actually hear from our experts were suggestions and insights and recommendations ranging from statutory plans for area development, how legislation and planning for heritage areas is important, how can we prepare and draft natural and regional strategies for heritage conservation, and how do we integrate these conservation policies with the urban development policies? How do we build the capacity of urban local bodies? How do we prepare frameworks for local area plans for to actually bring in these heritage areas into the overall development scenario? One of the points that was raised was also that our focus should not only be on the visual integrity, but also on the functional integrity of the city when we are talking about World Heritage Sites and in general heritage sites in any country. How do we bring in the urban local bodies to work into heritage conservation? How do we enhance their role in this process? How does co-financing programs help in improving quality of life of people? How do we improve their sense of ownership and a sense of community amongst them? And then lastly, how does the shift of approach from heritage conservation looked at in isolation to heritage conservation being a part of the overall urban development scenario? How does that help the local people? And how does community engagement actually help in running the projects efficiently? So these were some of the insights that we saw coming from projects in other contexts. And based on these, and as Ajay said, that we have taken the learnings from these webinars, from these case studies that were presented, from the technical assistance that we worked on with World Bank and Cities Alliance that supported the Hriday mission of Government of India. And then we supported a few states of Rajasthan and Karnataka in their state heritage programs and their local economic strategies. So these 75 action points that we have come up with are based on learnings from all these programs and all these activities that NIUA has been a part of. That is how we have come up with this list, and it is basically to address how do we achieve heritage sensitive development, and to define heritage sensitive development. It is, you can just see the points that on the screen. We are saying that we need a shift from the sectoral city planning and provision of infrastructure and services is needed. It is needed to integrate the city's heritage assets and socioeconomic dynamics into the overall policy narrative. We need to shift our approach from being monument-centric to an area-based approach, where we not only look at the built heritage assets, but also of the cultural expressions around the heritage assets and of the city, and how they are valued resources that will foster a more inclusive and socioeconomic development process. So essentially what we are saying is that we shift from the traditional urban renewal approach to an inclusive urban revitalization approach. And how is it different? It's different in terms of traditional approach being a top-down one, where it was more supply-driven, and the inclusive approach is a more bottom-up, where it is a demand-driven approach. It is based on what the community wants, what are their aspirations, and what are their heritage values. It to the traditional renewal approach did not have or had a very limited community consultation. However, our new approach, we want to develop it based on participatory methods. We want to involve the community as much as possible so that they have a sense of ownership towards the assets that we develop. Um, Again, as stated earlier, the earlier approach was sector-based, where we were looking at providing infrastructure only, and we are moving from that to have a area or territory-based approach or interventions, where we not only look at the precincts or the building, but also at the buffer area around it. So this is the shift that we want to achieve. And to achieve that, we have come up with these 75 action points for urban local bodies. These are specifically targeted towards the urban local bodies to help them achieve heritage sensitive development in right now. This is for Indian cities because of the because we have taken into account the governing systems that we have in place. But these can be contextualized to any other city anywhere in the world. And again, these are commemorating the Amrit Mahotsav on the occasion of India's 75th year of independence. We have, just to go broadly through these points, we have divided them into these 5 focus areas, where we are saying that we need to institutionalize, we need to apprise and engage the community, we need to identify assets and build the city's database, and a very strong database at that, so that the future generations or anyone who is working after us does not have to reinvent the wheel. We have to strategize and plan for the city. We have to actually have a vision for the city. Where do we want to go? What do we have today? And what do we need to actually achieve that? And of course, capture knowledge throughout through our learnings, build partnerships, and so on. So basically, these points are to achieve certain outcomes, and these outcomes are aligned with the HUL approach outcomes, which is a strengthened sense of place, improved planning, a good deal of land and property values, more high-end service sector, and more investments coming in, attracting more tourism and more tourism-related activities. And of course, lastly, achieving sustainable development goals of the new urban agenda. Moving forward, I will not go through each of the points because it's a long list, as you know, but what I will do is I have clubbed them together and I will present certain key highlights which we want your attention towards, because all the other things are very, some things that we have been doing, Indian cities or other cities around the world have been doing, and they don't need a separate introduction. So for example, in considering the focus areas of institutionalization, identification and building of city database, and uprising and engaging the community, we have these certain headers under which we have other several points. But what I would like to draw your attention to is the preliminary and periodic assessment of these assets or of these resources that we want to build. Generally, how the listing and identification of assets process followed in Indian cities is that the administration just identifies certain persons and they go on site and identify certain heritage properties. But what we are saying is that we need to form an inclusive stakeholder group for the town or the city, which will include not only the residents, but the local NGOs, the civic volunteers, the academic institutions, the craft persons, the departments, of course, the administrative departments, neighborhood groups, all these people come together to identify their own resources, be it natural, be it cultural, or be it even human resources. And by human resources, I mean the expertise that is required to achieve these goals. So we are saying to map and reach out to these identified stakeholders and form this group. And later on, what this group will do is do the listing and mapping, valuation, grading together to identify their own assets. Involve the community, design community engagement programs, initiate activities that will actually interest the community to strengthen their knowledge on their city's heritage, and it can be both tangible and intangible heritage. We need to conduct interviews and surveys with the different age groups that we have to understand their interpretation of heritage. What does heritage mean to them, and what do they want to include as heritage in the list? Uh, Develop a civic engagement platform wherein they can directly interact with the civic authorities. Again, listing and mapping not only includes the monuments or the buildings, but also includes sites, precincts, places of identity, places of memory. It includes intangible practices such as traditions, arts and crafts, any folklore that exists in the city. And each of these lists have to be built and reviewed by the stakeholder group that we have constituted, so that it is not like a unilateral effort from the civic body, but the entire city is actually involved and engaged in this activity. Moving on, valuation. What the valuation process that is followed by the city is very limited, whereas we are saying that extend it to include socio-cultural, aesthetic, associative values, economic values, financial values, build consensus around these, reach agreement within the stakeholder group, the inclusive stakeholder group, and then kind of assign these values to the buildings or the sites. Further, moving on, I will not get into the details of grading and documentation because everyone is aware of that process. Assigning roles. How do we want the roles to be shifted from what their current role is to the new role? For example, if you see on the screen on the right, I have a few examples where the administrative section currently is the decision maker or the sole source of finance, whereas the new role can be of a facilitator for community engagement, for participation, for regulating incentives and standards, or for providing of essential public services and goods, but not necessarily, it may not be a unilateral activity, it may be a collective activity. Similarly, for community, the residents and the users, the private sector, the experts. So identify these active and passive stakeholders, define their roles, what do we want their new role to be, and take steps towards it. Further, there is Constitution of Heritage Committee, which we have in plenty, legislative provisions, which also they do exist, but we want them to be more robust. Moving on to strategizing and planning and knowledge and partnerships. In strategizing, we are saying that conduct timely assessments of assessing the vulnerability of heritage assets to everything, to not only impacts of climate change, but socio-economic pressures. And then based on that, develop your development strategies. Integrate these values and vulnerability statuses into the wider framework of city development. You identify the investments that are coming in the city for your local arts and crafts, and how do you want to change the investment, the inflow of investments? How do you attract additional investments? For example, in Rajasthan, many of the heritage sites have been converted to have a revenue. And these activities are very sensitively done. They are not damaging the property. They are not damaging the assets. They are showcasing their local traditions and folklore. So build on such activities, learn from each other, and build on such activities, develop such activities in your own city, and explore innovative financing tools for heritage management. In terms of planning, look at the precinct or area level plans, delineate these areas or precincts, have a strong database, use GIS and tools that we have today, which we did not have probably 15 years back, to actually map these assets. Empanel and engage necessary technical expertise, management expertise. And these are certain points that not all the cities constantly look at or take care of. So we are highlighting these in the action points. Going
Mayura,
further,
sorry to interrupt you. You may like to conclude in another couple of minutes, please.
yes, this is just the
Thank
second
you.
last slide, so I'm at the end. In terms of managing and monitoring, establish local management frameworks. How do we want to manage our heritage assets? Identify indicators to track the optimum use of investments that are coming in. What are the new investments that you want to attract in the city, and how do you want to use them? Establish a support system for the property owners. Currently, they are running from pillar to post to identify people who can help them in conserving, restoring, or taking care of their properties. And along with these property owners, we also want the support system to invite citizens such as women, youth, other stakeholders to come and support the administrative body in actually achieving these goals. Lastly, for building partnerships, we have to identify appropriate public-private partnerships and involve people component in it. So we will have a people public-private partnerships wherein we use all these resources to actually do activities and conduct programs in the city. Identify and record the lessons that you learn throughout the process that is being followed. And why are these lessons important? Because then you can actually develop a toolkit, you can develop a guidebook that you will follow probably 5 years later, that these are things that worked 5 years back, and these are the things that did not work, so we need to change them. Disseminate the learnings that you have. Engage the stakeholders and technical experts in regular meetings for ideas exchange. Celebrate your achievements. Many of the cities do this today as well, but most of the cities do not actually celebrate their achievements in terms of managing heritage. Do that so that people are also aware of these activities, of these achievements, and they build a sense of pride. Ensure cities' participation in large-scale events, in global discussions on urban heritage management, and disseminate your learnings on these platforms and also grasp external learnings. We can always learn from each other, city to city, and countries within countries, and that's how we can actually develop and build on this. Yeah, that's about it. These were the 75 action points. I would request your inputs on these, and of course, these are at the draft stage right now, so we can always improve on these. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Mayura, and thanks for giving a very graphic and step-by-step approach for facilitate or for the cities to adopt a heritage-sensitive approach to sustainable city development. As Mayura mentioned, these are still at the draft stage, and we would welcome your inputs, whether through discussions today as a part of the panel, or written comments, written inputs to us, which we would consider while finalizing these 75 action points and recommending them to the ministry, which could then be a part of the advocacy campaign with the cities at large. So thanks again, Mayura. And now we come to the interesting part of this webinar, whereby for the next 30 minutes or so, we would be having a panel discussion. And my request to the panelists would be, please, if you could respond to the 75 action points that have been explained now by Mayura, and these were also shared with you earlier over email. Your disagreements, agreements, issues that need to be strengthened, drawing from your vast experience of working with the cities. Also, you may like to advise on the institutional, legal, and policy framework changes that need to be incorporated to strengthen the city agencies to take forward this agenda. Uh, and your inputs again would be very, very handy. In the panel today, it's my pleasure to introduce the panelists. We have Mr. Arvind Kumar, who's the Special Chief Secretary and Principal Secretary, Urban Development Department, Telangana. We have Mr. Octavi, who's the Secretary General, Metropolis. Mr. Jordi Pascal, Coordinator, Culture Committee, United Cities and Local Government. Dr. Shashwat Bandhopadhyay, Professor, CEPT University, and my request also to Mr. Sameer Unhale, if you could join as a panelist and respond to these action points. Your CVs, as I said earlier, are being posted on the chat box. That would help to familiarize all the attendees to your expertise. May I first invite Mr. Arvind Kumar, and my request to all panelists, if you could restrict your comments and observations to 5 minutes each. Thank you. Mr. Arvind Kumar.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. So happy to be a part of this discussion. I was listening to my previous speaker, so I'll just give you the things which are happening on ground and what's happening in Hyderabad. So a couple of things. Hyderabad is one of the kind of heritage cities, and we have been working to kind of get a lot of recognitions and other things in the process. But more importantly, see, what we are doing is there was an act, Telangana Heritage Act, which was passed in 2017, which provides for setting up of every district. And in Hyderabad, it's like the municipal corporation will be heading the heritage committee at the district level or corporation level. They will also have subject experts dealing with this particular subject, as well as officials will be there who kind of deal with the issue. Now, having said that, this is just the organizational setup part of it. What we have started doing is we have based on, it so happened one day we were traveling, myself and minister, one of the structures, it's called MJ Market. We just passed by, and minister was mentioning when he was a child, they used to be, it used to be well maintained, and it has kind of fallen off during the decades. And can something be done about it? This happened about 3 years ago. We started we thought we'll do a simple restoration. I tweeted once, and the response was huge. People joined, and there were jack arches which were completely kind of gone. The iron support which was there had collapsed. So thing which we thought would take 6 months actually took around 3 years, but the structure is completely restored. We have been hosting a lot of musical programs there. Recently, there was a Sufi concert. We have a theater festival which was happened. It's a vegetable market, by the way. And we have been hosting now these events, and it has become a landmark. People have started coming back. People are coming with families. Along with that, near Charminar, this Lard Bazaar is there. Recently, Abha Lamba was engaged, and we are trying to do the heritage facade kind of thing on both sides, and that's in the process. It's very interesting that I find the value of social media in the process. There's another structure which is called Sardar Mahal. It's one of the Nizam's building, and it was being used by the women from Nizam's family. And I'm told that nobody can reach on the terrace. So that's the kind of structure which is done, very specific for the purpose for which it was meant. Now, that was being used as one of our offices, completely dilapidated. So we have entered into a tripartite agreement with the local municipal corporation, municipal administration, and one of the local heritage architects firms, an enthusiast by name Prashant Lahoti. We are going to make it an art village. So we are restoring Sardar Mahal. It will have an art village. It will have an exhibition place. It will have theater performances. It will have art cafeteria and things like that. So that's under process. It's just about 100 meters from Charminar. Then what we have started doing is near Charminar and Tangband. Tangband again is one of the very, very historic roads which were done during Nizam's time. And again, the road had kind of collapsed during all this period. We took up the restoration. It was brought to the shape in which it was there originally. And every Sunday, we stop the traffic and we are having what is called Sunday Fun Day. So on an average, every Sunday, about 50,000 to 80,000 people turn up there with families. It's more towards the older part of the city. And it's such a pleasure seeing families coming there and enjoying time. We have made, it's like a street furniture is there, lighting, heritage lighting is restored, fencing is restored. And this has become a huge success whereby we have involved people and we are making it a leisure activity on Sundays where families can spend time. So in the process, we are also doing a lot of cultural programs there. Having seen this, there was a demand that Charminar area also should be made a cultural kind of pedestrian friendly and traffic free on Sundays. So we started doing what is called Charminar, Ek Sham Charminar ke naam. We have already done 3 of them. We do it twice a month. And again, attracting huge crowd. It's really nice to see thousands of families coming out and spending quality time. So our idea is that it's not top down, as I think I just heard the term. It's very much based on what people think over the years has kind of degraded and should be restored or can be restored. I find the value of Twitter extremely useful because sometimes what we do is we simply say that, okay, we went to this area and any suggestions. And there are a whole lot of people who kind of come forward and then start working with us. Just to give you an example, we have started restoring step wells. There are more than 140 step wells in Hyderabad. And most of them are in the state of decay. So either they have been covered up completely with garbage and debris, and or the ones which are there are used as kind of trash bins, basically. So we took up this drive and we have already restored about 15 of them. And one of them at Sitaram Bagh, it was completely covered with garbage. And as we kind of kept on digging, the water came out, we discovered some beautiful architecture inside, and a stage has come where corporates, there's a school which is there with us, Chirag School, they have involved, the entire school, high school is involved in restoration of one of the step wells. There are corporates who have come forward saying that they would like to adopt some of these step wells. So what I'm trying to say is, likewise, clock towers. So idea is, if people have confidence in administration that our intentions are right, we mean good for, we mean we are genuine so far as these heritage structures are concerned. They see the value, tourism potential in this, and people get involved. There's a huge support from people. And it becomes a drive where we at one point just become the enabler, and then it's somebody else who's doing. We have involved NGOs, we have involved corporates, we have involved locals, and as a result, I think Hyderabad is a unique combination where modernity, in terms of in terms of real estate, it's the fastest growing real estate in the country. It has overtaken Bangalore in last 3 quarters. So not just the new construction, but I am saying that we are very keen to restore our original heritage, which was a part of Hyderabad. And so it's a very pleasant thing that people keep coming, elected representatives keep coming. We have a member of parliament from Hyderabad, Mr. Asad. He came the other day saying that Miralam Mandi, which was constructed 200 years back, should be restored. So let's go and visit. We went one day, it was again in the state of decay, and we have taken up the restoration. So our idea is we'll just restore it to its original shape. It will continue to be a vegetable market with these days. Likewise, there is another one, Monda Market. Again, a vegetable market, 200 years old. We are restoring it, drainage system, flooring, lighting, roofing, and then again, the same sellers will continue to be there. Murgi Chowk, the name is very interesting, but that's a market where it is a non-veg market. Again, a heritage, it was in the heritage precincts next to Charminar. So I'm just giving you some example that how people's confidence in administration at some point, based on what we have done. And we have just done restoration and kind of one MJ market, which is there, Mojamjahi market. Ms. Han has joined. She was there. She has seen the work and she has seen the kind of response which people have given to us in that market. As I said, it's a vegetable market and now we are hosting musical concerts there. So that's the kind of confidence people have got in us. And I'm very confident that we'll be able to continue this drive. We'll make it a people's movement, and a stage should not be far off where people become watchdog if anyone is encroaching or destroying. That's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Mr. Arvind Kumar. We have always been, conscious of the fact that Hyderabad is among the few Indian cities which have set up the organizational structure for heritage management and integrating heritage management with larger city development goals. Thanks very much for elaborating or giving us examples of heritage conservation, the adaptive use, as you said, in the case of Sadar Manzil, the engagement of the community for repurposing and revitalizing heritage assets as well. We did, as a part of the Cities Alliance World Bank Technical Assistance Program to the Government of India, we did cover Hyderabad as one of the pilot cities, and we had prioritized interventions which would help to integrate heritage management with larger city development as well. But that was many, many years ago, I think around the year 2013. Thanks very much again, Mr. Kumar. May I now invite Mr. Octavi, Secretary General, Metropolis.
Hello and good afternoon from Barcelona. It's a pleasure to be here today with you and from Metropolis, the World Association of Metropolitan Areas and Major Cities, to support this series of webinars together with UNESCO and the National Institute of Urban Affairs. I would like to react to the previous keynote speakers and to the 75 points. I think it's very, very interesting, and especially I like this holistic approach. For the first time, I think we see this holistic approach to heritage. Maybe I'm missing something at the beginning, is that maybe we know it, but we need to highlight it again, is that most of the time city leaders, they think that sometimes looking at heritage in this way is an obstacle to development. And so I think we should think in terms of pedagogy, how we can do pedagogy to city leaders to understand that heritage, protecting heritage, developing heritage and landscape is an asset for the city, and not only an economical asset, because most of the time city leaders, when they talk and they think about heritage, they think in terms of money, how much money they can make because of tourism, attracting people around, but as well it's an issue of, I think it appears, but I would like to see it more on the 75 points, is about heritage, it's about identity. I mean, it's about cohesion. It's about the significance that the communities provide to their entourage, to the surroundings, and this is very important. And I was very happy to hear this idea of listening to communities. But of course, as said, we need to do still a lot of pedagogy with city leaders, because otherwise, especially in big cities, when we think in terms of big cities and developing big cities, we think most of the times only in terms of structures, big structures, and then heritage comes in between, and it's an obstacle, whilst it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity as well, and we've seen for the pandemic, because of the pandemic, heritage is connected to public space. They make livelihoods much better. It's about as well quality of life of citizens. So it's not only about beautifying spaces, it's about the quality of life of citizens, protecting heritage. And I like this idea as well of these intersectional approaches in policy making and in planning the city, that takes into account heritage from different perspectives and the impact of this heritage. And of course, the other issue is about the financing of this planning with a heritage approach. we've been talking about public-private partnerships, but as well we need to think in terms of who owns this heritage, who takes advantage of heritage, and as well sometimes this is has not. I'm not sure I've seen it on the previous presentation. Is the issue linked to another idea of gentrification? Sometimes when we work in landscape in the city, we protect heritage, special monuments. We can at least at the end of the day not giving opportunities for the communities that they have this heritage there in that area, but we are promoting gentrification. Sometimes we don't do it on purpose, but this is something also we need to take into account when we're investing in heritage. And it's a difficult. Sometimes it takes difficult decisions. But of course, this idea, and I'm very happy, and I say it again, of involving all the time the communities in the discussions, I think is critical, because they also provide a different significance to the heritage, and we need to connect to them and to ensure that they can live around these areas. For me, that's critical. And then as well, another idea is we had a project, and sometimes about this, we had a project in Metropolis with it's from a different continent. It was between Brussels and Montreal. It was the title of the project was in French. In English should be something like, I hope it makes sense, rebuilding the city over itself. And it was about these cities, how they take advantage, how they seize the opportunities of having heritage, of having patrimony, to transform it for new uses for the city, not to destroy it, but to take as well to seize the opportunity, because sometimes we see that, well, this is not, especially the case, this case was, it was not historical, well, it was historical, but not very old. It was industrial heritage that they wanted to keep it, but then they transformed it. It was not about transforming an industrial site in another industrial site, but providing new ideas for the city to make new usages. And I think that I was missing this idea as well of how we can make heritage not only staying there, but as well an opportunity for other developments and other usages for the people living in the city. And I think those are more or less my reactions to that document and to the 75 points.
Thanks, Octavi. I think very well put. You have raised all the pertinent questions. And I think the most important was your opening remarks, the need for pedagogy and for advocacy with the city leaders, so that they do not look at heritage and heritage management as an obstacle, but rather as an opportunity for local economic development and for catalyzing improvement in quality of life of citizens at large. Financing, again, has been a long-sticking issue. Whenever we talk about heritage management, or even in the context of city development, who pays for facade restoration, for example? Is it the property owners, or is it the city at large? Should the public agencies be investing in private properties? How do you incentivize facade management? I think it's more a question of land use. Can you allow, multiple uses of heritage properties, and this could be an incentive for maintaining the facade of the heritage buildings as well. But yes, these are issues which are yet to be addressed when we are trying to scale up the adoption of the HUL approach. Thanks once again, Octavi. I would now like to invite Jody Pascal, Coordinator, Culture Committee, United Cities and Local Government. Over to you, Jody.
Thank you very much, Ajay. A huge pleasure to be with you, and congratulations to the organizers, to UNESCO, to the National Institute of Urban Affairs. I'm also as Octavi de la Varga, I'm speaking from Barcelona. A pleasure. I will share the screen with you and share a few of the slides that we have prepared. Slides that are related to our frame, our narrative, and to our advocacy. And I will try to connect these three issues to your 75 action points, which I find extremely useful. Congratulations for this move. Our frame, connecting culture to the paradigm. To your left, the current paradigm of sustainability, economy, social inclusion, environment. To your right, the paradigm we believe reflects better how societies today operate all around the world, how we as a humanity also live today, and better reflects also who we are as human beings. We are convinced that we need to add culture to the paradigm of sustainability. We need to add culture as a pillar, a component, a dimension of sustainable development. This is what we are doing with our frames, the Agenda 21 for Culture, our declarations, and our toolkit, Culture 21 actions that we approved in 2015. You will see that we place cultural rights at the very beginning of our charter of commitments. Citizens at the center. Citizens at the center, analyzing the obstacles so that people can have access to cultural life, identifying the obstacles, identifying all communities, peoples that do not have this access and need to understand the world, need to participate in shaping the future. We do some work with cities all around the world. I want to give the example of Bhopal in India, the work we have done with InTouch, wonderful report based on Culture 21 actions. Let me go to the second point, the SDGs, culture in the SDGs. Understanding the frame, using new resources, sitting at the table. 17 SDGs, no one on culture. This is a tragedy for heritage and all culture actors. Yes, we know we have several possibilities, the cultural localization of the SDGs, culture as an enabler of sustainable development, culture in people-centered development. We promote in all our cities that yes, we are saying yes, we are in all the SDGs. You just have to find, yes, the big five, of course, target 11.4. You are all aware of this, protect and safeguard natural and cultural heritage. The other 10 targets equally important, from 10.3 to 15.9, climate action, policy coherence, resilient infrastructure, basic services. But the reality is that we are not called to the main table of sustainability. We don't have a goal. We are not identified as actors, as main actors, and we need to invent new tools. So this is why we invented this guide, Culture in the SDGs. This is why we have this OPS, good practices on culture in sustainable cities, with all good practices indexed with the SDGs. This is why we have invented the 7 keys workshop that is taking place in cities all around the world, with 7 commitments, 7 keys that cities fulfill in order to relate culture to sustainable development goals. And last but not least, our most recent document, the Rome Charter, on the development of cultural rights at a local level. And third point, long-term advocacy. We need to be bolder, we need to be more, and we need to connect the local, the national, and the global. We need advocacy coalitions at all these levels. We tried in 2013, we wrote how a culture goal should look like, and we, in this campaign, Culture 2030 goal, we are still active. And for example, in 2019, we wrote a report on the implementation of the SDGs at a national level. This year, not yet published, but we are working on a report on the implementation of the SDGs at a local level. And we will be happy to share the results of this with you in the future. Connecting the local work to the global conversation on culture and development, the outstanding work done by the UN Special Rapporteur on cultural rights, a still weak position. which we all need to reinforce, of course, the work done by UNESCO and the work done by civil society. And I will finish here. The extreme importance of civil society in making noise, in connecting cultural actors to environmental actors, to the feminist movement, to the climate action activists, because we need to be more. We need to be more. This struggle for heritage at the center of urban strategies will not be won only with cultural and heritage actors. We need to convince many other actors. It will not be won without us, but it will not be won only with us. So yeah, this is my last message. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jordi. Thanks for very focused but pertinent message through your PowerPoint. We definitely take note of the fact that you have underlined culture as an integral part of the paradigm of sustainability, what you term as the fourth pillar of sustainability. And for sure, we take note of the contribution of cultural heritage management to the achievement of the 2030 development goals as well. And we couldn't agree more with you that there is the need for a stronger advocacy with the national and sub-national governments on, to promote cultural heritage management, not only to take care of our heritage, but also to use that to catalyze, sustainable city development and local economic development. Thanks once again, Jordi. I would like to invite Stefania Abakurli, Senior Urban Specialist or Senior Urban Planner from the World Bank. Stefania, I hope you are on the group.
I'm here, Ajay. Thank you.
Good morning.
Hi, good afternoon there in India and elsewhere in the world. Give me 1 second, please. Okay, Ajay, I didn't put together a PowerPoint or presentation. I just would like to share a couple of words. You know that the World Bank, to a certain extent, introduced the HAL framework and concept in India in around 2013, when we were selected by UNESCO as one of the 3 pilots for the implementation of the HAL. At the time, there was Ballarat in Australia, there was Pakistan and India. And in the case of India, India was the largest and is still the largest case that implemented HAL under the Inclusive Heritage City Development Program, that was one of the sources of information for the later design and implementation of 3D. So we have been on this journey for a very long time together, the World Bank along with the Ministry, now Urban Development and Urban Affairs, and NIUA in India. I think based on this practical, I think the point is, HAL was established in 2011. So what is it to tell 10 years later in India? What is happening? So I think there are many important actions that have taken. And one important step ahead of including heritage, including culture, broadly speaking, right? Because it's not only about, when we talk about how, it's really about the space, it's really about the relationships that are taking place in that spaces, is looking beyond the tangible, the buildings, to look at how the buildings, the people, the society, the various values, they happen and shape and transform that place. So, and how provides a tentative set of tools for managing all this relationship and the changes that result from that. Sorry, it's early morning here, kids going to school. But what I feel is that really one of the steps, important steps that India has taken under VDA is the fact that it starts bringing together some of the key actors, which is, for instance, in this case, the city administrations, the urban practitioners with the cultural practitioners. What you remember that when we started this program, there was a big divide. There was still that paradigm of development against culture, culture against development. I think India in the last years has overcome this, and this is a very positive, but there are enormous still challenges within India for the true implementation of how to use how in its fundamental objective of guiding development, guiding growth, guiding fast growth, which is not the case of India. India is not a fast urbanizing, but guiding and directing it. You have seen the last 2 days, several cases, including from Susan in Ballarat and others, how they have done. But I think one of them is on your city planning framework. Is still a very weak framework, and there is a lot of change that needs to be taken and needs to be introduced there to make sure that culture is properly acknowledged first, then value, then assess, and finally is properly added in and guide, hopefully, the whole process of city development, service provision, etc. There are many regulatory and legal issues, taxations, the whole financing. How are you going to finance? There is still in India this whole issue about you haven't achieved basic service targets, and so how you would be financing, which is not yet very clear within the local administration's heritage buildings or spaces, etc. So, but the good news, I think, for India, as I mentioned before, there are steps taken towards it, but others needs to be taken at more systemic level. And my final one that needs to be taken is capacity, and both within the development, the city administration, within the architecture and urban planning schools, but also within the cultural professionals, right? They also need, so, but it's good. There are many steps forward, and I see that if things continue and if the NIUA and others continue pushing for that, along with the centers of knowledge and universities, I see that considering that India is urbanizing not at a very fast speed, there is still a huge opportunity for India to turn around and lead its urbanization, taking consideration culture. There would be a major game changer for India, as you did in the Hindus times, etc., when culture was fully integrated in it, and you saw how the positives came out of it. I stop here. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Stefania. I still struggle to pronounce your second name despite saying your name for the last 10 years. But yes, I agree that India has moved a long distance since the year 2013, when we had delivered the technical assistance program to the government of India, and for the first time probably introduced the concept of historic urban landscape. And thanks very much for educating all of us on the HUL approach, which was absolutely new to us at that time. And Hriday has also helped to take the agenda forward, has resulted in a lot of learnings, not only for the 12 cities that were covered under the Hriday program, but also cities across the board have learned from the engagement of the 12 cities, but challenges remain. As you said, the challenges remain of guiding urban development, making urbanization and urban development sensitive to heritage management, turning the tables so as heritage management is guiding urban development rather than the other way around as it happens now. Capacity building is the long-standing issue, not only of the city stakeholders, but not only city agencies, but stakeholders at large, including the academia. Financing, as we know, Indian cities are struggling to finance from their own resources and deliver on the mandate that is, the normal provision of urban services. And here we are asking them also to be to look at heritage management. I'm not saying that the cost benefit analysis would work against the city, but they need to reach the stage where heritage management, proper heritage management, would pay for itself. It would not draw from the state exchequer. So thanks very much, Stefania. Now I would like to invite Dr. Shashwat Bandyopadhyay to give his opinion on the 75 action points and also to share his experiences. Thanks, Shashwat.
Okay, thank you very much, Ajay, and good evening to all fellow speakers, panelists, and participants of this exciting special edition webinar series on historic urban landscape. And as we are celebrating the grand finale of this wonderful webinar series, where we saw some 12 wonderful presentations on historic urban landscape approaches and nearly over 24 experts, speakers, urban officials sharing their views on this important aspect. In the next few minutes that is allotted to me, let me share very briefly some of my key takeaways and especially my thoughts on these 75 action points. First of all, I must congratulate Ajay and the team of NIUA for coming up with this quick actionable points. But I would like to share a few of my comments because, as you know, we started this journey with the World Bank Cities Alliance, the first phase of ISCDP. And later, as I moved from working with various urban heritage landscape, particularly in India, Sri Lanka, and Bhutan, and from the urban planning point of view. So my point of view that as I see this historic urban landscape, the challenges from the lens of an urban planning professional and also an educator in an urban planning university. At this outset, as we all know, that historic urban landscape approach proposed a new life to the old and historic together subject of heritage conservation and urban planning. And we observe various global and national case studies. Although these two important disciplines have tried coming together, but a lot need to be done. And except for the cases like what we saw in Georgetown, little bit on Gaul, this is an area we need to connect the urban planners and the conservationists together, because then I think we will be able to leverage the advantage of both. Because as you know, urban planning is basically trying to look at the city as a whole. So how do you leverage the value of each of them? That needs to be explored further. And in India particularly, I'm quite excited as we speak that urban spatial planning practice is undergoing a rapid transformation. And there are various series of national initiatives like GIS-based master plan, local area plan, town planning scheme, and smart area development in smart cities. Some of these schemes are offering tremendous opportunity for Indian historic towns and cities to leverage historic urban landscape approach, provided there exists a better conversation and convergence between the conservation and urban planning. And I think for effective localization of historic urban landscape, we must have to do, we have to take this road very quickly. I know we have moved I remember when some of you were discussing that what we saw in 2011, we have moved a lot, but we have miles to go further. The next important issue I used to flag here is this very important issues of heritage finance and economics. As we all know that this living historic cities present a complex set of vulnerability and challenges, particularly in contexts like India. I remember in the webinar one, Dr. Rand was talking about Paramaribo. He said, that this dealing with monuments are much easier than dealing with the historic buildings. So it is always easy to deal with heritage monuments or institutional building and where the people are living in residential and commercial use. For example, in one of the old historic city in India, which is a property size of about 535 hectares and 2,700 residential and commercial building in use, we did a quick estimate that what would be the cost of repair, rehabilitation, conservation, and public infrastructure. And a kind of a quick back of the envelope calculation came to around 350 million US dollar in these buildings, and plus about 150 million for public utilities and infrastructure. While the investment in the public infrastructure can still be mobilized through some of the ongoing national, subnational missions, two critical issues always keep haunting us is about how do we finance heritage buildings, which is in the private ownership, with a complex tenureship. Sometimes the owner is missing or sometimes owner is not available. The livelihood status of the owner, the kind of economic status, and also the physical age and vulnerability. And the physical age and vulnerability is another challenge because most of the housing finance companies and banks are averse to giving any credit to this building. The second aspect is about even if you are dealing with the public infrastructure, even the money is available, the knowledge and sensitivity to how to do infrastructure development in a heritage quarter is mostly unknown. I remember seeing this very interesting picture from Sekhavati region about this transport corridor, and many old cities today when the water supply pipelines are given, they completely cut open the road and then it is left there. So do you have that kind of technical know-how into this? So the subject of cultural heritage finance in India has not evolved. And also the role and scope of fiscal instrument like heritage TDR, viability gap funding has largely remained unexplored. And we need a lot of discourses about economics of heritage because to influence our public policies at national, subnational, and local level. My last point here, that is it about the regulation of heritage regulation. For any regulation, you must remember that this is an inverse relationship with the cost of the regulation with the cost of affordability and housing. For example, when we are working in Bhutan, we realized that a certain form recommended in the roof enhances the cost of the building by 20 to 25%. And similarly, these are the challenges in our Indian context that we may come up with a lot of regulation, but that we need a lot of fair amount of critical analysis around that. What is the influence and what is the kind of relationship between regulation as well as, and then who has to bear this cost? And some of the challenges in some of these buildings have remained. Most of our historic cities about this affordability and sustainable livelihood for the heritage building owners. As I conclude, I'd like to once again thank UNESCO-New, Ajay from NIUA, Metropolis, my colleague Jigna at CEPT for organizing this special edition series. And hopefully, because as we are completing this 10th year, we have learned a lot of lessons, we have covered a journey, but we have to pick up some of these very, very important issues and gather empirical evidence to see how to take the historic landscape forward in a serious manner. Lastly, I'd like to propose, since we are as a way forward for this series of webinar, it could be a good idea to quickly take up a rapid assessment of historic urban landscape readiness of some of the ongoing missions, maybe Amrut or Indian smart cities. And as many of the previous speakers mentioned, that we must now renew our efforts towards large-scale training and capacity building through face-to-face self-learning, self-paced learning, and also I'm very excited that we have recently put it up in National Urban Learning Portal. I think there is an enormous opportunity, so we need not stop here at the end of this 4 webinar series. Let's join hand together to make our way forward in localizing this very important aspect of historic urban landscape. Thank you, and I'll give back to you, Ajay.
Thanks very much, Shashwat. I completely agree. Financing is one issue which the country hasn't addressed adequately as yet. But my immediate response to this, if I can respond to the issue in effect, is that financing is one piece of a bigger jigsaw puzzle. It's related to the entire process of heritage management, the 75 action points as were described by Mayura earlier today. Now, if we are talking about X number of buildings in the inner core city area of Ahmedabad, for example, who considers this as heritage? Do the communities consider them as heritage? Are they willing to partner to conserve these buildings? Mind you, the communities in the core areas of Ahmedabad, the walled city, are big businesses, generating a large percentage of city product itself. Then why can't the walled city generate resources as well? This is not a critique of Ahmedabad at large, but just to highlight a point. Similarly, I recall, and you would recall as well, our discussions with Hyderabad while we were doing the HMP for Hyderabad as a part of the TA. One critique that one often heard from various stakeholders was that just based on the age of the buildings, a large housing stock had been frozen. The city couldn't do anything, or the stakeholders couldn't do anything about the heritage. So it's very important as to who defines heritage and how the heritage is designed, how the valuation process is undertaken, and what kind of partnerships are established for heritage management and its integration with sustainable city development as large. Sorry, Shashwat, I did not want to enter into a discussion here, but I couldn't resist from responding to this issue. I thought it would be important to flag it to others' attention as well. Mr. Samir, would you like to come in here and briefly respond to the action points?
Hello, I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Yeah. I think it was a very interesting discussion to listen. Normally, when we deal with usual clerical and administrative issues in urban areas, very often the ideas of heritage are not into very primacy. That needs to be admitted, the day-to-day functioning of urban local body, especially. Issues of heritage are fairly less in frequency. And I think this 75 points which have been discussed now should ideally come to the nationals in way of some programs, some advisory at least, in which it will be easy for the urban local bodies really to those who are interested can move ahead, because it's a specialized area. I think the issue of capacity was pointed out in urban local bodies, and very often the availability of heritage architects or heritage conservation architects, and how actually to extend the monument to the adjoining landscape is a issue. So I think capacity building will be a very important part, and advisories from the central ministries encouraging the state governments and freedom to the city governments to adapt to them, I think would be a good approach that can be considered. I think financing was very important. I think Rudaya mission is a way of also a way of financing heritage for that matter. So probably the expanse of this could be made more prominent. The finance commission grants could be made more readily available to the purposes of heritage control. And I think I'm not very sure, but the municipal acts mostly are the state legislation. So there is not a common municipal act in India. Every state government has its own acts, and maybe in these acts we could include heritage conservation also as a compulsory or a obligatory duty of urban local body. I'm not very sure if most of the states have heritage conservation as a duty at all into the state statute. So probably we could have this once it is made a part of the enactment, then it's easy to budget it. And of course, the issues of finance will always be there. Maybe we could, provide some way of private sector participation. In fact, in bigger cities, that wouldn't be a problem because, in fact, most of the MCGM, if not MCGM, but I think the Victoria, the CST terminal, and the other major buildings have been funded by the CSR activities in and around the bigger cities, at least. But you will be surprised. Even smaller cities have a lot of heritage with them. And in fact, as we are aware that Lonar is a very small town in midst of Maharashtra, one of the rather backward districts of Maharashtra, but it's the only basaltic crater made. It's a huge crater. There's a lot of temples around that. And in fact, when we had visited that place a couple of months back, the issue of heritage conservation then comes in direct confrontation with the known ideas of real estate development around that area. Once a restriction line comes, it does creates a conflict which probably needs to be resolved in some win-win scenario. So I think this 75 points are really important. And of course, we could have a public response to that. We could put it on some portal, get more and more ideas. I think students are very enthusiastic. Architect students and even students of history and politics will be very interested to react to this thing. And I think we could have a greater deliberation on this 75 points. I think this webinar series was a great idea. In fact, I learned a lot many things in urban heritage conservation despite working in this sector. And I hope the form, the concise form of this comes out in a report and is shared to all the municipalities. And at least those who are willing can at least have a roadmap how to move ahead. So thank you, Ajayji. It was a very fantastic thing to listen for the last 1.5 hours. So thank you very much for that. And I hope all the best that these ideas which are coming up here will land up in the advisory and in some policy documents. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Samirji. CSR is a great idea. All of us are aware of certain corporate houses adopting a monument and then being in charge of maintenance. But we are also cognizant of the fact that this had created or generated a lot of political heat, particularly in the case of the Taj Mahal. And your suggestion on documentation of the proceedings of the webinar series is well taken. I think that's a great idea and would generally contribute or largely contribute in the advocacy efforts as well. Thanks very much, Samirji. Neha, do we have Mr. Vijay Varghia in the group?
No, unfortunately, he wasn't able to join.
Okay. In that case, I think it's time for us to wind up the panel discussion now. There's not time enough for me to pose direct questions to each of the panelists. I'm sorry about that. But I would not also make any effort to give you a summary of the discussions, since these were very wide in scope. But drawing on Stephania's observation, I think I would like to just highlight a point here. Traditionally and historically, the urban local bodies in India have been in charge of service delivery, urban services in particular. Let's say the network services, water and sanitation, solid waste management, and so on and so forth. Under the 74th, as a follow-up of the 74th constitutional amendment, the 18th schedule, over time, the urban local bodies have also been made in charge of the city planning, though it's not across all the cities. Some of the cities in some of the states have definitely devolved this function to the urban local bodies. And here we are talking about heritage management that requires a combination of the three, that is service improvement, urban planning, and heritage management requires diverse expertise. Not necessarily the urban local bodies have adequate skill sets in the three domain areas. And here we are talking about intersectionality as well. Is there a case of facilitating the cities to integrate heritage management with city development by strengthening them, by providing them with newer tools and methodologies which they could adopt to achieve the goal? Can we develop some kind of toolkits which can be toolkits and templates which can be readily used by the cities to take forward this agenda? I leave you with this thought. And now I would like to invite Ms. Jyoti Kosagrahar. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. She is the Deputy Director, World Heritage Center, Culture Sector, UNESCO. And she would be making a short presentation on the call for action to accelerate inclusive urban and heritage management through the HUL approach. Over to you, Jyoti.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you all for this invitation to NIUA and to UNESCO New Delhi, of course, and CEPT. I think we're all involved in developing this event, which I think is an excellent initiative. I think a lot has been said already. I just want to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the historic urban landscape recommendation and the call, the HUL call for action. Let me just bring up my presentation very briefly. The HUL recommendation, just to give you a very quick and brief overview, in case you're not familiar with it, is the 2011 recommendation on the historic urban landscape that calls on the member states of UNESCO, which is 194 states parties, to integrate conservation and management of cultural heritage in cities and settlements with policies and actions for sustainable urban development. It applies to all historic cities, not only to the cities that are inscribed on the World Heritage List. And it advocates a landscape approach for identifying, conserving, and managing historic areas within their broader contexts, considering the interrelationships between the physical form, the natural features, and social and cultural values. So this very innovative standard-setting instrument argues for the integration of heritage conservation with urban development plans and processes in order to manage change to protect the heritage values and the outstanding universal value in the case of World Heritage Properties, or the OUV. The HUL recommendation recognizes the importance of aligning with and furthering the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the New Urban Agenda, and the African Union Agenda 2063, even as the World Heritage Sustainable Development Policy was also adopted by the General Assembly. And more recently, there has also been efforts to align with the guidance from the IPCC and the Paris Agreement. HUL recommendation conceives urban heritage as an asset that can contribute to the implementation of human-centered projects of urban development. In particular, it aims to relate the different heritage components to both new methodologies and activities that can sustain themselves. So the HUL recommendation has become the standard framework for the implementation of the World Heritage Cities Program, which is one of the 6 programs, the 6 thematic programs of the World Heritage Center. Out of the 1,154 properties inscribed on the World Heritage List today, 318 properties, almost a third of them, are World Heritage cities. And so these are living urban centers or parts of settlements. And so the international meeting on heritage in urban contexts in Fukuoka in Japan, that was held in 2020, developed a methodology to better identify urban attributes and a basic framework for urban heritage management that was developed refining the previous six-step approach for implementing this recommendation. The 10th anniversary of this recommendation is this year in 2021, and we had a major event that took place in June for this celebratory event when the HUL call for action was also launched. The online event itself consisted of several meetings and workshops that took place between the 16th and 24th of June that gathered together more than 86 speakers, included 9 mayors and city leaders and 35 renowned experts from 39 countries. So it was a major reflection that focused really largely on issues around governance, on financing models, on heritage management, in managing change in cities, heritage and sustainable development, and the holistic protection of the natural environment in cities. The HUL call for action was launched during this time, which invites cities worldwide, cities and organizations worldwide, to raise awareness about the recommendation and accelerate inclusive urban heritage management through the HUL recommendation approach. Mayors and city leaders from all regions of the world gathered in 2 panel discussions to share their experiences on this, and you can find this all on our website. So the key idea of the HUL call for action is, first of all, to sensitize, or rather you can undertake 3 types of actions. The first is to sensitize local and national actors about the HUL approach through kind of awareness raising activities, whether you're looking at heritage walks or you're looking at being able to bring young people to have a kind of competition around photography and video competition to capture storytelling, to especially with older citizens who can talk about their experiences in the city and what the meaning of the places were and what was, how the city was in their experience and their memory. And those are all very important aspects of historic understanding and raising awareness of the historic aspects of the cities, because very often people who live in historic cities take that area for granted. So they're not as familiar with its histories, especially today, as people are more focused on their phones and on television and such. A second aspect of the activity that we think very relevant to the historic urban landscape recommendation is, as I heard several speakers talk about, looking at multiple stakeholders and being able to bring these different stakeholders together for consultations. So whether it's private sector, public governments, private sector, local businesses, or local communities, or even different sectors, because very many times management of heritage is only seen as the work of the heritage department or the culture department authorities. It's not really seen as something that needs to be taken up by people who are involved with urban development, with the master plan, with the infrastructure development, with the, all the other departments, with the sewage and waste management or water management departments. So being able to bring these different stakeholders together is a major challenge. And I think being able to mobilize that interest somehow to bring these stakeholders around the table to talk about the future of the city is a very important step. And the third is to develop local heritage management actions that are based on the HUL recommendations by joining the network, exchanging on good practices. So those who sign up for it join the UNESCO network for HUL, and that enables exchange with globally on good practices on different types of strategies for integrating heritage into urban development. And again, this is not specific only to World Heritage cities, but to all historic cities. So I just invite you to go to this website and sign up for this. This is again on the this was the mirror board that was used to develop the kind of activities and actions. And I want to just end by talking for a minute about the climate change and how this has also been very, very relevant in more recent months, where we've been discussing with the cities through different dialogues that we're having during this 10th anniversary event, talking about adapting cities for climate resilience and seeing what kinds of impacts are being felt by different cities and what kinds of strategies different cities are using, as more than a third of the World Heritage cities are already located along the coast. They're very vulnerable, and historic cities generally, in cities historically developed around coasts and along rivers. So they're more likely to be impacted. We've also had discussions around COVID recovery and resilience to that. So I invite you in general to join our activities, to join the UNESCO network for HUL, to go to our website, look at these different programs. I invite you to especially sign up to receive the Urban Notebooks if you're not already receiving it, which is our monthly journal that talks about all of these events and that are coming up or that have just passed, so you can keep yourself updated. Provide us inputs on your own experiences for Urban Notebooks, because we share, it's really a platform for exchange on the experiences of cities. So we have also a section on different innovative practices. We also have the World Heritage Canopy, which is a platform for documenting different practices. And I want to leave you with that to say that the Canopy platform looks at different ways in which heritage-based solutions for cities can be developed. So I invite you to join us in all of these different areas and wish you all the very best for your future action plan, which we very much look forward to. Thank you very much and congratulations again.
Thanks very much, Jyoti. Thanks for the presentation. Well, friends, this brings us to the conclusion of this special edition of webinar series to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the HUL recommendations. It's been a pleasant month and a half of preparation and organizing the webinar series. But I don't think, as Shashwat said, this does not culminate or this does not bring our partnership and collaboration into culmination. First of all, let's work to document the proceedings of this webinar series, which can be widely disseminated and would help in advocacy. I invite comments from everyone on the 75 action points. We would be convening again to discuss these action points at large, finalize them and submit it to the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. As I had mentioned in my opening remarks as well, this borrows heavily from the revitalization guidelines which were prepared under the World Bank and Cities Alliance Technical Assistance Program and formally sent by the Country Director World Bank to the Secretary MOUD, as it was called at that time. Also, I would invite collaborations with the partners to provide technical assistance to the cities to adopt the HUL approach for integrating heritage management with sustainable city development efforts. On behalf of NIUA, I would like to thank the 3 collaborating partners, that is UNESCO-CEPT Research and Development Foundation and Metropolis. Personally, I would like to thank Juni, Neha and Yashraj, Shashwat and Jigna, and also Agnes and Octavi from Metropolis. And last but not the least, my colleague Mayura Gadkari, who has worked tirelessly to take this, or rather to organize this webinar series. And she was on leave for the past two weeks, or since till Monday this week. But we did not feel that she was on leave because she was working as usual. So thanks everyone.